Okay, let us do this. So we are going to be picking up on page 54, paragraph 2, but David's going to get us sort of caught or, recapped and centered and set a context for where we are and where we're going tonight. Go ahead, my man.
Hey guys, my name is David. I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. So I want to go back to page 53, go back one page if we would. And again, we're going to start on page 54 in the second paragraph tonight. But I just want to set up what we talked about last week because it's so vital that I understand what Bill's writing here. This is about getting from belief to faith. It's about I'm going to have to make a choice here. It'll be the last choice that I have to make. I'm not going to say that we do have to make a decision in 3, but this is the choice in 2. So if we go to page 53 in the second paragraph, the first thing I got to consider before I even read this paragraph is, what am I worshiping? Am I worshiping God, or am I worshiping my emotions? Is God only there for my circumstances? And that's been my experience in the past. He was always there for my circumstances. Or even when I got sober early on in sobriety, it's like, I needed maybe I'm driving really fast and God maybe rain that day to slow me down. Is that the kind of God that I have? Or maybe how about a parking lot God? Thanks for that great spot at the mall, God. When I pull in and get that great spot. Well, I don't think God does those kind of things. I think he's a little preoccupied with other things going on in this world. So again, the consideration is, am I worshiping God, or am I worshiping my emotions? Or do I just have a God for my circumstances? See, and the question is, then we go to the page 53 in the second paragraph, and in quotes right before that, it says, we don't know. So the we don't know is probably the 3 hardest words I've ever had to say in my whole entire life. And it still are today. They're very difficult. Not as difficult as they have been in the past. See, because I thought saying I love you was the 3 hardest words. Well, no, I love you came out, roll off my tongue, piece of cake when I was out there. It's like, it just was easy to say. Didn't necessarily mean it, didn't come from my heart. But we don't know is a very, I don't know is a very hard statement to make. So let's go right into what Bill's writing here. He says, we became alcoholics. So when do we become alcoholics? Well, we became alcoholics when I concede in my innermost self that I'm a real alcoholic. Like, I may have all the symptoms. Like, once I start, I break out in craving. I can't manage the amount I drink. And once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. And my life is unmanageable. We read about that in page 52 and what that looks like. But until I really understand what a real alcoholic is, I'm just throwing that term out. It's willy-nilly. It has no meaning. It has nothing backs it up. But now we know what a real alcoholic is. So when we became alcoholics, and then the comma says, crushed by a self-imposed crisis. So not external, not my job, not my spouse, not my upbringing, it's biological. I have it, but the self-imposed crisis part is I cause all this damage on my own because I'm selfish and self-centered. We'll get to that in about 10 pages from now. It says, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or he is nothing. Back on page 25, we talked about it. We talked about there is no middle of the road solution. And maybe that refers more to just 90 meetings in 90 days, those statements, or just put the plug in the jug, or just don't drink, go to meetings. But this also applies here too. There is no middle of the road solution. Do I desperately need Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous? And do I desperately need God? And my answer is absolutely I need both of those things, because crushed by that self-imposed crisis, having no relationship with anything whatsoever, not even including myself, I loathe myself. I have to face this proposition, that is, and it says, God either is or he isn't. That's it. Either is or he isn't. There is no middle of the road on that. And then the question is, what is our choice to be? So that is a choice. My last choice I got to make. Again, I had to make a decision in 3, but that's the last choice I had to make. God is everything for me. I take God everywhere I go. And it starts out every morning on my knees, humbly asking God to direct my thinking to keep me sober. I do that. I have never missed a day in all the years I've been sober. And I don't get on my knees humbly just because, my God's an egomaniac. I get on my knees to remind myself that humbly I need God in my life. That's not just to not to pick up a drink, but also to manage life today. So the next paragraph is about reason, and really mainly that's what's it's all about self and how I can't manage self either. And again, it's just about a lot of things that I worship, external things. On page 4, in the first full paragraph, if I only had enough money, if I just had the right girl, my life would look a lot different. And none of that's true, because this is an internal illness with an internal solution. So that's all I have on that. And and the last thing I will say, that I've always had some sort of faith, but it's always been misdirected faith. My faith has always been misdirected when it came to God. So now, as I work these steps, my faith will get directed in the proper way towards a God of my own understanding, or no understanding.
Thanks, David. Okay, let's do this. Page 54, full paragraph number 2. Imagine life without faith. Were nothing left but pure reason, it wouldn't be life. But we believed in life, of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense that you can prove a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, yet there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons, created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling on to a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons themselves seem more intelligent than that. At least so the chemist said. Sam's got nothing. Words, words, words. David?
Well, I don't have a lot to add to that paragraph, other than I got to flip ahead just a little bit to chapter 5. We'll probably get there maybe next week. If we're fortunate, we definitely get there. So just on page 58, in the second paragraph, we read this at almost every meeting we go to. It's called How It Works. And in the second paragraph, it starts out, our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like. So what I'm supposed to be doing at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm speaking from a podium or a Zoom meeting, like, what did my life look like running on self-will? What does it look like? It's not about my drunk-a-log. Maybe I need to qualify myself, but what did my life look like running on self-will? It was a disaster, and it still is today when I'm doing it, because we are all given free will. All of us, it's the gift that we've been given, or the disaster that we have. It's up to me if I want to apply these steps in my life today. So, that's basically all I got to add to that paragraph, David.
Yeah, I think Bill's just getting sort of, he's a little philosophical in this paragraph. He's really trying to bang home, I think, the point here, guys, that we're not just machines, we're not just robots. This isn't just about sort of the mechanics of being an organic being that's going through life, like a single cell organism. It's saying there's more than that, right? This is what makes us distinctive entities as human that are in concert together with a higher power, right? We have this sense of belonging, we have this sense of belief, we have this sense of faith, and the entirety of that is what gives us purpose. And that's his point about, it wouldn't be life without faith, because it wouldn't be a life, it would just be an existence. If you understand my distinction here, guys. Mm-hmm. Hence, we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable, though it emanate from our best minds. What about people who proved that man could never fly? Sam, nothing.
Could you possibly give us the definition of reason, though, please, Sam? I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So
I do have it right here.
Oh, please.
Go ahead.
It's very long, but the last part is really what describes it the best. Most narrowly, the power of the mind, which enables it to work upon that which is learned by seeing and hearing and etc., and to draw conclusions from this knowledge. So basically anything that you see, hear, smell, that is to draw conclusions from this knowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, so on the top of page 55, when David finished that paragraph, it says, what about people who prove that man could not fly? So we're talking about scientists, because we could not fly. And I think the only thing I really got to add to this chapter, to this paragraph, and really to the whole chapter, is what this chapter really does for me is shows me how much I don't believe, so that I can believe. When I get past my old ideas, my old thinking, my old prejudices, all those things, when I lay those things aside, then I find out how much I don't believe so that I can believe. I believe in there's something more powerful than me that keeps David sober, that keeps Bob sober, and Tony, that has a relationship with that power, and their life looks way different than mine. So I guess the proof is today for me is through others and their demonstration. Do I want what you have? You bet your butt I do. Then what do? I do what you did. And it's the directions in this book.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything beyond that to add. So we'll just keep on going here. Top of 55. Yet we've been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. People who rose above their problems. They said God made these things possible, and we only smiled. We'd seen spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Thanks, Sam. You know what really my perspective is, David was talking about sort of the point of this chapter, and I think each week that we've been in it, we've been sort of echoing, what is Bill doing here? And I think most of us who studied, AA and the Big Book of History, we know Bill Wilson was ultimately a sales guy, right? Stock speculator. And even in the original version, if you guys have seen, the original version of how it works, sort of pre-manuscript, towards the end of how it works, he talks about, this information has been laid out to sell you 3 ideas. And he was always sort of selling. And really, I think as I reflect here, this chapter, more than anything else in the book, Bill is really selling us, and I think he's doing it slickly and he's doing it smoothly, but he's really trying to convince us to help us understand how we were going through life, how we were using faith, we didn't even realize it, and how it's really just a simple shift to take on a new belief system and let that adopt into faith and center it around, understanding God maybe for the first time as we know him, or constructing a new relationship with a higher power that we already had in our life. And that's what he's really doing. He just keeps saying, guys, isn't this who we were? Isn't this how you thought also? He keeps sort of calling back to that. And then he's saying, and now let me tell you how it can be different.
Yes. So I guess the question is, do I now believe that in my life, wait, let me restate that. Now, do I believe there's a power in my life that can move me beyond the bedevilments on page 52? Do I believe that? I need to know. I mean, I'm looking around. I don't see Ashton and Ali suffering from this internal illness because they got spiritually fit and they practice the disciplines 10 and 11 and 12. So again, it's about a demonstration in my life. And do I want what they have? I got to do what they did. So not only on page 52 of those bedevilments, but in every area of my life, do I believe there's a power that can move beyond that stuff? Well, my experience today is absolutely in almost 25 years of sobriety. Man, my life looks nothing like it did even 5 years ago, and God knows it better not. I got to continue to grow in understanding and effectiveness of what God's will is for me today. I was telling Dave right before this, my father-in-law moved in with us, and he was eating dinner, and I finished because I had to get up here, and he said to me, he goes, hey, can we watch the end of that Pearl Harbor show we were watching together the other day? And I said, Pop, I can't do it tonight. I go, but tomorrow night's a date. It's just like, dude, have a relationship like that. And I mean, sure, over a period, he hated me 25 years ago, guys, and for good reason. And just because I got sober and I stopped drinking, I went to meetings, until I started applying this work in my life and I started knowing that God can move me beyond those things in my life, that demonstration in his life started changing for me too, and the way he viewed me. And we have a wonderful, loving, caring relationship. Like one of my best buddies, David, knows this, and he wants to spend time with me. It's like ridiculous, right? And I want to spend time with him. So I know that God has moved me beyond those things in 52, but it's a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And I'm grateful for that today because I connect to that power first thing in the morning and throughout my whole day.
And just a bit more about this paragraph real quick. What Bill's painting here is this other picture. It's a picture of, there's a couple of things he's saying here. He's putting a little bit more hope and promise in here. right? Been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. So I don't know if you want to look up liberate, Sam, but I could sort of give the ad hoc. To be liberated from something is to be freed from it, right? So we're being spiritually freed from the world, right? People who rose above their problems. So we're so stuck in our old lives, right? Everything in our psyche, in our head, our heart, and our gut, it's weighing us down. Through spirituality, we can be free of all that. And when we experience this in other people, when we were still sort of cynical and negative, right? Is that God made these things possible and we only smiled. What did that mean? Probably we're like, okay, whatever. Yeah, your God did this for you. That sort of cynicism. But we had seen spiritual release in other people, but we like to tell ourselves it wasn't true, right? Those people maybe that were into their faith, into their organized religion, that had wonderful things happen and they gave that glory to their God as they understood him. I heard things like this and I was like, you're out of your mind. That's crazy talk. I don't buy into that stuff, right? Because I hadn't had the experience. Couldn't believe it. Right? That was the old thinking, feeling, and belief system. Oh, thank you.
I have the definition of liberty, which is freedom from slavery, imprisonment, or control by another.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Binders of self, same thing, slavery.
That's right. Slavery, self-slavery,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Actually, we were fooling ourselves. Get your highlighters out.
Mm-hmm.
For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. Highlight that whole paragraph if it's not already highlighted. All right, every word, every idea is gold in there. What do you got, Sam?
I have calamity and pomp. Calamity is defined as disaster, tragedy, something causing great pain or loss. And pomp is showy display of self-worth. So in the sentence, it may be obscured by disaster and tragedy, by showy displays of self-worth, by worship of other things, but in some form or another, it is there.
Thank you.
So before I read anything in that paragraph, let's connect some dots. Go back to page 45. We read this earlier on in the first paragraph. If you guys would hang on to 55, go back to 45. And I'm going to read this paragraph because it's going to set up this paragraph that we're on at 55. So page 45, first paragraph. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to, which is a must, find a power by which we could live, and I had to, another must, to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously, and here it is. But where and how are we to find this power? Okay, go back to page 55 in the second paragraph. Actually, we were fooling ourselves. So what is fooling myself? It's just is a trick. It's a deceit. It's duping myself. It's really what it is. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea. So fundamental idea is everything is built on an idea. It's innate. It's inside of me. So this fundamental idea of what? Of God. This is already inside of me. But why can't I get to it? Why do I need to seek it? Why can't I get to it? Well, here's why. And this is Bill and his brilliance. You know, he tells us what the problem is, again, the solution right away, and then he's going to give us a practical program of action. It may be, I think he's being a little liberal there too, obscured by calamity. We need to have that definition, if you would, please, Sam. I have these things, but I want you to do it because you're better at it than I. And then by pomp and by worship of other things. Remember, I brought up these things. I brought up this worship of other things, about, worshiping women or money or jobs or the ocean or the sun, all these other things that were blocking me from God. But in some form or other, it is there. So it is there. It's just deep down inside. I got to get rid of the garbage. I got to get rid of it. And we're going to have steps to do that for us here. For faith and a power greater than ourselves, in this miraculous demonstration of that power in human lives, our fact is man itself. What are those miraculous demonstrations? That's the result of other people working the steps in their life and them having a relationship with God. That's a miraculous demonstration. I might have some more, but I'm going to take a breath.
Okay. Do you want her to read Calamity and Pomp again? She did give those.
She did?
You want to hear
I
them
wasn't
again?
paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm in my own little David world here.
One more
Okay.
time, Sam. Come on. Those are important words. David, pay rapt attention.
All right. I have calamity, which is defined as disaster, tragedy, something causing great loss or pain. And then pomp is showy displays of self-worth.
I just didn't relate to them.
Sam.
I just didn't relate to them. That's why I didn't hear them.
Okay.
Oh, I relate to them. I relate to them. I apologize, Sam.
You're good.
So good writing is such that, when right words are strung together in the right way, it really resonates. And so I think this is a great example of that in this paragraph, because what is Bill saying? He's like, actually, we're fooling ourselves, right? So he's taking sort of a stab at us and ourselves, like collectively. For deep down in all of us is this fundamental idea of God. When, we talk about something being fundamental or somebody being fundamental or a fundamentalist, it's very acute, it's very concentrated, it's very uniform, right? So he's saying this very specific idea of God, we've all got it. But if that's the case, this is the point he's making. Why is it that we have to seek this at this point? Why wasn't it we just sort of effervescently bubbling up through our lives? Because if you're like me, you did everything in your power to smash this down, right? Self-imposed crisis? How about self-imposed crises? So calamity. How many times have you said, I wouldn't be shocked if every person in the all 37 and 38 of us here tonight, everyone to a T used to say something like, my life used to be so chaotic. I loved the chaos. I loved the drama, right? So it's a very common trait in spiritually ill people, right? How does all that drama and chaos get generated, right? Self-created calamity, always causing a problem, always picking a fight, always starting some sort of issue. And then what about pomp? So a showy display of self-worth, right? I'm better than you. I am smarter. Look at what I spent money on. Look at my fancy new car. Look at my shiny new shirt I'm wearing out to the nightclub. Look at me buying drinks for people at the bar that I don't even like. All right? Joe McHugh talks about that in Joe and Charlie, right? Spending money trying to impress people he didn't even like. Right? Why? Because of big shotism. Spending money buying rounds of drinks when we didn't have money to pay the rent at the end of the week, right? Irresponsible displays. So that idea, that fundamental core idea of God is right down in my belly. It says it's deep down. My belly is about as deep as it gets, but it's obscured by all the problems, all my self-imposed crises, right? All of my showing off, all my ego, all my big shotism, and by worship of other things. Probably all those things that I was being pompous about, right? Worship of other things, women, sex, money, power, reputation, better job, better house, fancy clothes, all those things. Right? All of that obscuring my ability to really seek God. But despite all that, in some form or other, it's always there within me. Right? And how do we know this? How does Bill draw this conclusion? Because he's saying for faith and a power greater than ourselves, and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. Even Dr. Jung, right? Carl Jung, when he relates this story to Roland back on page 27, I feel like we haven't gone back to page 27 in a few weeks. Let's go back. My favorite page, we must. Back on 27, again, Carl Jung, brilliant, one of the most brilliant and respected psychoanalysts and psychiatrists of all time, talking with Roland Hazard into three-ish paragraphs down, when he's talking about to Roland pre-AA, before we had a way for alcoholics or addicts and other, people with spiritual maladies to get better. The doctor said, you can get better. He says, exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. How early are early times? Probably recorded history, right? We know in the Christian and the Jewish Bible, there's stories of drunkenness and the dangers of alcohol, right? This goes way back to when we started stomping grapes, right? He says here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena, right? So Bill's just sort of stating again, since early times, we've seen this. These vital spiritual experiences, they're phenomena. They were rare, couldn't be caused, couldn't be explained well. And then the miraculous demonstrations that come out of this, what do those look like? The doctor goes on to say that stuff on page 27 as well, that ideas, emotions, and attitudes that were driving me, the guiding forces of the lives of somebody like me are cast to one side and replaced by no one. That is an absolute miraculous demonstration. Dave was illustrating this personal story, this amazing relationship he has with his father-in-law now. I know David's whole backstory. I know how much his family despised him and how much his father-in-law despised him. And some of you fathers-in-law, mothers-in-law, if you had children that were treated this way, the way that David treated his wife, his father-in-law had good reason to hate him. Now he's living with them and they have a beautiful, friendly relationship. That is a miraculous demonstration, guys. Right? And we all have stories like that. Once we're recovered, we all have stories like that. Every one of us is a miracle. It's not lip service.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more to that thing, since we're talking about where we find this God and it's deep down inside of every man, woman, and child, it's a fundamental idea of God. Since this power is deep down inside of me, so therefore it is available to me to deal with my addiction and my unmanageability. So it's available to me. That is a key word there. That's kind of a Herb K. If you guys ever heard Herb K do his stuff, he talks a lot about that kind of stuff. I have a power that is available to me. So God isn't lost. I have to seek God. That's my responsibility to continue to do that through this process. But this power is available to me. What is blocking me from it? It talks about that calamity. Bill uses the calamity in the 4-step promise too, as we get through this book. And this pomp is my ego, this freaking ego of mine that Harry Tebow says this pride it regenerates itself. Dude, I find it happening to me, but I'm aware of it because I start the clock on 10 when I wake up, and it doesn't go down until I hit the bed at night. I mean, 10 is all day long. The clock never stops on 10, and step 10 is so vital. So having access to this power available to me, God is available to all of us. I just got to get rid of things. And there's later on, we're going to talk about, I was just bringing it up now. The only thing I can be defeated by is an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. Later in the book, I think it's on page 570 of the book, it talks about them things. So that's what I can be defeated by. So my ego, it's got to die, smash, over and over and over again.
Carrying on. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us. Left the same? Okay.
Well, we finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup. So this is again a description of where it's at. It's deep down inside of me, just as much as the feelings we have for our friend. So that is deep down inside. It doesn't get any internal than that. And then the problem is, why is it the last place I look? Why isn't it the first place I look? Because I haven't been listening or paying attention, and I'm blocked off from these things. But it should be the first place I look, and it's the first place I look today. Because in the 10-step discipline, it's going to ask God at once to remove these things. That's going to be the first thing I do in that 10-step discipline. And then he gives us all kinds of capital letters here in the middle of start sentences out. He was there. He was much of the fact as we were. We find that this great reality, capital letters, circle, 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 was deep down within us. Bill is emphasizing this and re-emphasizing this and pointing out that we all have available to us this power, every one of us. And in the last analysis, the original 100 we're talking about, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us. So that's a promise because it happened for the first 100. So it can happen to me. It's available to me too.
So Bill's continuing to, I think, sell a little bit here. I think he's been sort of building us to this crescendo, right? And now he's making sure that we're really feeling it and hearing it. You know, he's sort of gotten to this point. So faith in some kind of God, again, staying broad and open here, some kind of God, whatever kind of God, he's not prescribing it, right? We love using the word God, right? We don't shy away from it. Again, if I'm talking God, I'm not speaking for Bill and the first 100 who wrote the book. I use the word God because I'm lazy. It's a 1-syllable, 3-letter word. I don't know if it's the God of the Bible. Yeah, I was raised Jewish and don't really practice. You know, it's not really my thing. I don't know if that's the same God. David talks about this all the time. Do I really understand God? Am I really capable of understanding God? How can I define God or really know what a God is beyond just understanding that God is everything, right? And if it's everything, how do I understand that? Understand very little, right? I understand how to do my job most days. I understand how to be a husband most days. You know, how to be a son, a brother, a friend, all those things. My entire comprehension of the universe, pretty low. So if God is everything to the universe, what do I really understand, right? Watch a couple episodes of something by Neil deGrasse Tyson. You'll quickly get right-sized to how very little and insignificant we are and how very little we know, right? So some kind of God, any kind of God, was a part of our makeup, how we are built, how we are constructed as humans, right? And sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he's there. And David touched on this a little bit. And again, Joe McHugh does a nice job of distinguishing between the difference between seeking and finding. You know, finding is really about something's lost. You know, Joe keeps saying God's not lost, God's not lost. Seeking is about furthering an understanding of something, right? God's not lost. He's right down here. He's been in my belly my whole life, even though I was pouring alcohol and cocaine and all sorts of things on top of him, trying to pretend he wasn't there, but he was there. And now that I'm confronted with that, based on sort of Bill's beautiful sales job here, now it's time for me to try to further my understanding of my relationship by seeking, you know, that with God as I understand him, or don't understand him, right? God as I don't understand him, it's probably better said. He's as much as a fact as we were, right? God's everything or he's nothing. So if he's everything, God is in me, right? He's a part of who I am. In the last analysis, it's only there. He may be found. Where? The location we're talking about is deep down within me. He is not at the end of the block. He is not hiding behind the tree. He is not down in the basement playing PlayStation. God is down deep inside me, in my belly, waiting for me to continue to seek him. Continuing on 55. We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. Mark that as a promise, guys. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. Mark that as a promise, guys.
I have diligently, which is defined as energetically. So in the sentence, if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search energetically within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, so when I read that first sentence, it says we can only clear the ground a bit. When I think about that, coming in the rooms early on, I didn't have the ability to do a 4th step just walking in day one. I just did not. Or the ability to go make my amends, plural, in 9, or do a 10, 11, 12. I didn't have the ability. But here's my experience. As I worked these steps, as I got a sponsor that worked out of this book, and actually that wasn't really my story, but I'm going to use it because I don't like to let the facts get in the way of a good story. I had a good sponsor. He's a great guy, but he didn't open up this book. I had to go seek big book studies when I first got sober, and I did. And that's okay. But then the ability comes that I get to clear the ground a bit. That's the direct result of these steps here. And if our testimony helps sweep away, these are my conditions. Prejudice, preconceived thought or an opinion, enables you to think honestly. Another condition, encourage you to search diligently. Another condition, within yourself. That's where I'm looking, not out here, not taking her inventory, not my job. If you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. Where else is the broad highway? Walking hand in hand with God on page 75 in the 5th step promises. That's another place we're going to be on a broad highway, walking hand in hand with our Creator. We're going to know Him better now. Those are some great promises in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And with this attitude, you cannot fail. What attitude can defeat us is what I brought up before. The only thing that can defeat me is an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. I got to get rid of my old ideas, saying this is not going to work for me. It does work. It works for Reese. I've seen it, experienced it in Tony. I want what they have. I got to let go of my old ideas. Whatever upbringing I had religiously, it's okay. But it's not the same thinking that I have today. And then the consciousness of our belief is sure to come. So deep down inside of me, it's going to get released. And in my conscious mind, I will start believing and having faith. And faith's definition for me is a firm belief in something for which there is no logical or material absolute proof. That I have this faith today. And I do have this faith today because we talked about stepping from the bridge of reason in step 2 to the shore of faith where you guys were at. I needed to do that. It's okay. Hand in hand across that bridge, we reach out to each other and help us through this process. I don't do any of this alone. Please, I have a Big Book sponsor today. That's all I'm going to say. So if you think you need I think a Big Book sponsor is vital. I think I need someone that can take me through this text.
So when you look at this paragraph, I'm thinking back to the beginning of the chapter. You know, not the first page or two per se, but really as we get into pages 46 and 47, those 4 paragraphs that I love so much. And when Bill's talking to us about what do we need to get started and how quickly we start to see results, right? And those 4 paragraphs, it starts on 46 with, yes, we have agnostic temper, and it says, we found as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results. The next paragraph talks about our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and effect the contact with Him, capital H. Next paragraph, at the start, this is all we needed to commence spiritual growth, basically laying aside prejudice and having an open mind about the conception of God. At the start, this is all we needed to commence spiritual growth to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. And then the 4th paragraph, as soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he's well on his way. So we're really coming full circle here. We're saying everything we can say, all of our testimony, all of our sales job, all of our explanations, our study, that only clears the ground a little bit, right? Yeah, hopefully it's going to help sweep away prejudice, give you, the ability to think honestly and encourage you to search, to seek diligently within yourself. If so, if you wish, if you're into this, if you get it, and you want to try something new, then join us. Yeah, on the broad highway. But this is something that must be initiated by me. I must pop open the door to willingness, to be willing to believe before belief. I must be willing to start to lay aside some of those prejudices, some of those old ideas, some of those old beliefs, right? The beautiful part of what happens, and the reason why it says with this attitude you cannot fail, and that the consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you, because if you're like me, this new way of thinking and feeling and believing was a very steep uphill climb for me. And I had to start trudging up that hill on my own. That was me cracking the door in willingness and belief and laying aside prejudice. But what my experience was that as I did this and as I persisted in it, as I was into action around this, the consciousness of my belief appeared. It was like this beautiful gust of wind up that steep hill. I wasn't just climbing on my own anymore. And by the way, at the top of the hill, kind of like on the shore of faith, was all you guys with your outstretched arms being like, come on up here. It's here at the top of the steep hill, top of the mountain. We've got faith. Come on, get up here. But I had to start that on my own. But God always starts to push me as I get going.
One thing I want to add to that, I kind of blew by it, and I don't know why I did that, because it's one of my favorite things to have experienced today, and I love to share with other people, is that last sentence that David pointed out all these promises that are popping out in this paragraph. But the last thing, this consciousness of our belief is sure to come to you. That is awareness. That is being awake, right? And I've always, a Russian philosopher said it. I don't know who it is. He's dead, so I don't think he'll be offended by this. He just said it. I didn't come over there. That's all I got to say. But the consciousness of our belief is sure to come. Aware. I'm not asleep, dreaming. I'm awake anymore. I'm starting to wake up. I am starting to wake up and know that this power is available to me. That is such an amazing consciousness, being aware. I'm awake. Awareness. Like, I can't make up any excuses. As long as I don't let prejudice and I open my mind to honest thinking and search diligently inside myself, I will then have, they're giving me a little bit of hint, this broad highway with this capital letters here, talking about God, walking hand in hand with that power by the time I get to fifth step. And man, I'm telling you, when you get to the fifth step, I've had that great experience. And every time I do this with another person, I take them through this work and I sit and listen to someone's forth, man, my experience with the fifth step grows, and my experience with God grows. Why? Because when in 5, I see the truth, and where there is truth, there is God.
Continuing on the bottom of 55. In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. I'm just going to read the whole few paragraphs here, David, and then we can talk
I do
about
have atheist.
go ahead, Jen. Yeah.
Before we go on,
Go ahead.
I had the definition of theist is a person who believes in the existence of God, and the prefix a is not. So not believing in the existence of God. So that man we will read about was an atheist.
Awesome, thanks. And the man is Fitz Mayo, and the story is Our Southern Friend. But here's a quick summary of it. Continues on the top of 56. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought an overdose of religious education. I'm sure no one can relate to that. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble and frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the last time, he lived in for the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his creator. Anything out of there, Sam? Yeah. I think it helps to sort of blister through the whole story, though, right? Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Nothing, Sam? I'm sorry, I wasn't watching. Okay.
Yeah, she's good.
Okay. Hold on. I was going to pull something up here. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, as David said, this is John Henry Fitzhugh Mayo, second person to get sober in 1935 in Towns Hospital. Bill D was first. So second person here. Also, it was AA number 3 in New York City. So it talks about, in this book, you read the experience of a man. So anytime I read any of the stories in the book, so like David pointed out, this is our Southern friend. It's the 4th story in the 4th edition. I read the stories because I think his story and Bill's are very similar to each other. So I'm going to try to look for similarities when I read his story. So did I drink like Fitz? Did I think like Fitz? Or did I feel like Fitz? That's what I'm looking for here. So I can look for the similarities. And then it says his change of heart was dramatic. So this physical change that was taking place of him was convincing and moving. On to page 56, yes, this guy was a minister's son. These are the things I should try to identify with. For me, anyways, I want to identify with it. I attended church school, became rebellious, and thought about overdose of religious education. Totally identify with that kind of stuff. For years thereafter, I was dogged by trouble and frustration, so shadowed by my past, business failures, insanity, fatal illness. Now, I don't have to identify with each and every one of them, right? Just like in the bedevilments, maybe some of them aren't necessarily true, or maybe you're sober and you go back to go look at them for a while. I don't have to look at all 8 of them and go, I don't have 2 of them, so I guess they're not in my life. No, I'm just looking for similarities and not differences. Then he talks about these calamities again. So this is the second time he mentions the word calamity. He's going to mention it one more time in the 4-step promises. This post-war disillusionment, the cynicism that he's talking about there. You talk about a point of self-destruction. That's suicide. That's what he's talking about there, taking his own life. And then a little bit farther into the next paragraph on page 56 in the second paragraph, one night when confined to a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic. Another approach. I study with Howard and Kathy. We look for words like approach. My job is to approach the newcomer, not waiting for them to approach me. They approached him. He would have never approached them, ever. He wouldn't have the ability to do that. He wouldn't have access to that. Approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. They don't say who that is, but I'm pretty darn sure there's only a couple. One of them that had it. That was Bill Wilson at that point, and he's in New York. So our friend's anger, gorges rose. So his anger, as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." That's a victim stance, right? Poor me. there is no God. He never did anything for me. You know, maybe you can believe in God all you want, but he didn't do anything for me. That's being a victim. And where there's victim, that is power, empowering himself. It's a lie. It's actually based on a lie because he was blocked off in pomp and circumstance. That's why he couldn't get to him. But later on, alone in his room, he asked himself this question. This is absolutely unbelievable. This is part of the spiritual experience that he had an open up mind to see the truth in this thing. Is it possible that all religious people have known are wrong? This is the same experience that Bill had in the hospital after Abby visited him. While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. So then, so he's actually in a meditative state, having this thought, right? He didn't voice this out loud. He's having a meditation state. Is it possible that all religious people I have known are wrong? So that's also, I see a question. I'm going to pose that question to myself. Third person, David, is that true? Do you think that all people, religious people you've known are all wrong? No, I don't think so now. While pondering the answer, meditation, contemplation about the thing, while pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Yeah, I relate to that completely. Then like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. This is a spiritual experience. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? That is a spiritual experience that he had. It's the exact same thing as Bill had here. That's a miracle. I had an awakening. That's okay. It doesn't, or I had, I'm sorry, I said it backwards. He had an awakening. I had an experience with the work here. But this is the same experience that Bill had, and it opened up his mind. He was willing to look at the truth for one moment that he desperately needed God.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've got, David did a really nice job of breaking all that down. Just, a couple of the key notes that I had here is on that first paragraph on 56, David pointed this out too. So what was going on in this guy's family? Post-war disillusionment, right? Ever more serious alcoholism. Excuse me, in his family, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. So these calamities that we talked about, right? It's obscuring God down in his belly, deep down inside him. So this all embittered and depressed him. But then what did he experience as his spiritual malady was growing? Post-war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse, brought him to the point of self-destruction, self-imposed crisis, right? Just like the rest of us. And then down into paragraph 3, he tumbles out of bed. He's overwhelmed by the conviction. Let me say this. Doesn't everybody want to tumble out of bed with the conviction and the presence of God? Because what do we love as alcoholics and drug addicts? 2 words: instant gratification. We don't like waiting for anything. We want what Fitz had, the word thunderbolt. We all want the thunderbolt experience, right? In Spiritual Appendix 2, I think David just mentioned it. It talks about, it uses different words, but the thunderbolt, the sudden versus the experiential, educational, gradual variety. We all want the sudden. In all my years being around, I've only met one person that had the thunderbolt experience, right? Had this terrible, almost died through alcohol poisoning, DTs, came out of it, perfect, recovered. But guess what can happen even in the thunderbolt? This gentleman failed to enlarge and perfect his spiritual life. And he went back out. Just because some people can get well quickly doesn't mean they automatically stay well. But coming back to this. So he got poured over this, and then what happened is God was shining his light on him. Basically, the barriers he had built through the years were swept away. We talk about sweeping away prejudice. Those are those barriers. The prejudice is being swept away. And he stood in the presence of infinite power and love, stepped from bridge to shore, right? Bridge of reason, shore of faith. Bill's he does such a beautiful job of bringing his allusions and metaphors and things back around. And for the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his creator. Now, whether it happens in the thunderbolt or whether it happens after some weeks or months and we just experience it one day, it happens. This happens 100% of the time. And I will say this, if it hasn't happened to you yet, do all the work, be thorough, Be honest, you will have this experience. Guaranteed solution if I do take all the steps thoroughly and honestly. Anything else, David?
Nope. Good.
All
I
right.
think we
So
should end
next
there.
week we'll wrap up. We got so close to the end of the chapter, so we'll just recap, finish it up, and then woo, how it works.
All right.